Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to Road to Jesus Ministry. Today I'm going to be covering the Abomination of Desolation. Since we are living in the end times, it's important to know what this event means and what to look out for. So I'm just going to cover some key basics of it. It's not going to be a lengthy video, I don't believe. And basically, the prophet Daniel had prophesied the Abomination of Desolation. And then I'm not going to go into the weeks of Daniel. I might make a different series, but there's 70 weeks of Daniel. Okay. There's the 69 weeks. And then the 70th week is the tribulation, which is 7 years. Okay. The Abomination of Desolation is the midpoint of tribulation. Okay. When the great tribulation starts. Okay. So God doesn't tell us when tribulation begins, but he tells us when we reach the mid-tribulation standpoint, and that is called the Abomination of Desolation. And if you have watched my 144,000 video and my what else, some other video that I have, you might heard of some of these verses already, but in general, I don't think I've covered in detail the Abomination of Desolation. So we're going to start first from the prophet Daniel and kind of go into detail what it means and what to look out for from a global scale, right? So you have eyes to see as things continue to play out in these end times. All right, guys, before I start, though, I want to just go over some key things. If you've watched my other videos, you already might make sense of what I'm about to say, but there might be some people that come across this video that don't watch my other videos, so I figured I'd just give a quick rundown so everyone's kind of aware of these things. So, like I already said, the tribulation is 7 years. That's the time we're living in right now. God doesn't tell us when mid-tribulation begins. When tribulation starts, but he tells us when mid-tribulation begins, which is the important topic of this video, the Abomination of Desolation. The Vatican, okay, the Pope is the false prophet in the Bible. He's one of the beasts. There's two beasts in the Bible. He's one of the beasts. And then the Mahdi, the Muslim leader that gets risen up and runs the caliphate, is the Antichrist. But they flipped it around. The Vatican has been working with the Zionist movement, and through things like the Bellflower Declaration and the Havana Agreement and funding Hitler for World War II, they pushed these Jews back into this fake promised land, and which created a two-state solution in 1948. And since then, Israel was established, but before it was just Palestine. And since then, the Zionists have been aggravating the Muslim nations for a long time, okay? Whether it's little proxy wars or just taking more and more land and stuff, but it's all on purpose to, like I said, aggravate the Muslim world to fulfill fake prophecy, which the Vatican has been working towards for a long time. Because, like I said, he's going to come in as the fake Jesus. And the 1,000-year reign that the saints are going to have with God when he returns, the Vatican is trying to fulfill this 1,000-year reign with this new green economy based on the United Nations global sustainability goals that are going to be ushered in after this old economy collapses. They're going to usher in the new economy, man, where carbon emissions is your new debt, and where you have to your vaccine record will be pegged on the global ID tag, and it will be resource tracking and management, and you'll be rewarded universal income for following the green economy guidelines and stuff like that. So, like I said, the first beast and the second beast in the Bible are the false prophet and the Mahdi. The Pope is going to exalt the Mahdi and give him authority to do basically what he wants, and kind of Islam is kind of going to take over. And this is why you see the Pope uniting with a lot of key figureheads from the Muslim worlds, from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the OIC, and the Arab League. And, he's been going to mosque, and he's been, ever since the Vatican II Council, they kind of both agree that they do serve the same God and that there's no division, right? So all of this stuff is to get us to this point where we're at now, which is why I'm not going to get into all this stuff, but this is why we have a lot of stuff happening worldwide, okay? And what else? Let me see if I missed anything. Yeah, so watch my 144,000 video with the Orthodox Jews, because it lines up with this Abomination of Desolation, because the remnant church and the Orthodox Jews, who all come to Christ, they flee Jerusalem before it gets sacked by the Muslims once this fake Antichrist gets risen up in this third temple. And the OIC and the Arab League are going to be like, look, that's the Antichrist. That's our sign to take him down, right? But the people that have eyes to see, the remnant church and the Orthodox Jews who come to Christ and are in Christ, they flee in time into the wilderness and exodus out of Jerusalem. And then everyone else left in there just gets kind of wiped out. Daniel 12, the time of the end. At the time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. Then I said, O my Lord, who shall be the outcome of these things? He said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away and the abomination, that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who awaits and arrives at the 1,335 days. So we see here in the very beginning that it says, there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. So persecution and time of trouble is going to be intense in these last days. And then towards the end of the verses, it says the abomination that makes desolate is set up. Okay, that's talking about the third temple being risen, right? And that there's burnt offering. The burnt offering is taken away, because in the third temple they start doing offerings and stuff, just like they did in the Old Testament. So once that abomination, once the third temple is set up and the burnt offerings start and are cut off, that's when the Islamic nations are going to sack Jerusalem and take over, because they think that's the Antichrist. Matthew 24, the abomination of desolation. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, and let those who are in Judea flee the mountains, for there will be great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days have not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. And then it talks about the coming of Son of Man. Immediately after tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven a sign of the Son of Man, and then shall all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. All right, so when we see the Matthew 24 verse that we first read, it talks about the abomination spoken by the prophet Daniel. Okay, so it's the same event being talked about. And it says, once we see this thing happen, we flee. Okay, those who are in Judea flee into the mountains. So they exodus out in time. Like I said before, the Islamic nations go in there and sack it for this fake Antichrist that gets propped up by the Vatican. And then it says also, just like it did in the book of Daniel, it says, for there will be great tribulation, such as never seen before since the beginning of the foundations of the world. Okay, so I'm telling you, persecution is going to be very intense. But there's nothing to fear, because once you have the Holy Spirit and you're guided by God, God puts you exactly where you need to be to continue to basically expand his kingdom, right? And then it says persecution will be so bad that if Jesus didn't come in early, that none would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. And then, like I said, right after that, it talks about the coming of Son of Man, right, that we talked about. So immediately after tribulation, he comes here, he returns, right, and he gathers his elect from the four corners of the earth. And it says the tribes of the earth will mourn. Okay, the people are mourning because they realize that Jesus is real, and those angels get sent out and start picking up the wicked. I suggest watching my wine press video if you haven't, so you can get a better context of the wrath of God and the wine press of God after tribulation occurs, when he returns. Okay, and that should give you more context in this. In Luke 21, verse 20 to 22, Jesus foretells the destruction of Jerusalem. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that its desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judea flee the mountains, and let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out in the country enter it, for these are the days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. So we clearly see again, okay, so now we just read Luke, the verse Matthew that we read before that matched, and the verse in the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament all match, because like I said, they're all talking about the same event. And here in Luke, it's talking about when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, okay? And like I said, the Islamic nations are going to give the go-ahead, and they're going to sack Jerusalem big time. Because like I said, they think it's the Antichrist, and they think they're fulfilling their Quranic prophecy, when it's all been, like I said, engineered ahead of time with the help of the Vatican and other big time organizations. And it says also, let those in Judea flee to the mountains, just like the other verses. And those who are inside the city depart. And what else? And that's about it. For these are the days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. So everything's being fulfilled and leading to the coming of the Son of Man. Revelation 12 verses 1 through 6. It also talks about fleeing into the mountains. Okay, we see the woman and the dragon, and a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman enclothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and of his head 7 diadems. His tail swept a third of the stars of heaven and cast them into the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, she might devour it. And she gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared for God, in which she shall be nourished for 1,260 days. So here the woman and the dragon is referring as the woman being the remnant church, okay, and the dragon is the devil, okay. And it talks about she was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains with agony giving birth, okay. So this period of birth pains and agony is talking about the tribulation period, because the woman, which is the church, is going to suffer massive persecution, massive birth pains until the return of Christ, okay. And then what else? It talks about the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, she might devour it. So what the devil is doing now is he's using the G7 nations and this new global sustainability goals and Space Force and all these things, because they're getting ready to wage war with Christ. And if you want better context and full detail of all of this, I recommend, okay, watching my short videos that I have of God's wine press, okay, which is the wrath of God when he returns, and then the aliens uniting video, which talks about the fallen angels uniting with the kings of the earth, okay, to get ready to make war with Christ. So if you add those events together with this video, you'll kind of get a better context of everything. And it says, what else? Oh, towards the end it says the woman fled into the wilderness, okay, where she had a place prepared by God, in which she would be nourished for 1,260 days. So this is referring to the same events that we just talked about previously in the other verses in Luke, in Matthew, in the prophet Daniel. They all have the same amount of days, like I said, because it tells us when mid-tribulation begins. So like I said, the sign of the third temple, we know that's the Abomination of Desolation event. The remnant church, the people who are in Christ, understand this. They flee it, okay, before it gets sacked by, like I said, the Islamic nations surrounding it. And once we flee into the wilderness, we're going to be, God is going to watch over us for the rest 3.5 years, which is 1,260 days until his return. Okay. And just like when the Jews left Egypt, when they rescued out of Egypt and they went into the wilderness, God provided manna and water, right, through Moses, using Moses. And the same thing is going to happen here, where he's going to provide supernaturally for his people. In Revelation 12, verses 13 to 14, it talks about the same event of the Orthodox Jews fleeing, okay, at the Abomination of Desolation. So it states, and when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness. So the place where she is to be nourished for a time, a times, and half a time. So once again, a key thing to notice is that it says the dragon had been thrown down to earth. Okay, so this is talking about the alien. That's why I said watch my aliens uniting video, because I kind of break it down in a short video that the Bible prophesied alien, like the fallen angels uniting with the kings of the earth. Okay, so it says they were casted down from heaven, and then he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. Okay, so once the devil and his angels get fully casted down, there's full mass persecution. Like I said, the devil unites with the kings of the earth, and it gets really bad. Okay, but then it says the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness where she may be nourished for times, and half a time. So times, and half a times is 3.5 years, just like the other verses we saw in Luke, in Daniel, in Matthew, and I forgot which other one. So like I said, it's referencing the same event. And when it states given 2 wings of an eagle, it's talking about just like divine protection. Okay, because when we look at Exodus 19:4, it states, "Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself." So just like I was mentioning earlier, how God rescued his people, he provided manna and water for his people, and he provided his divine protection over his people so they won't get harmed. The same thing here is being used, and the same reference as of a great eagle. Okay, the 2 wings of a great eagle. So in Exodus, this was referenced and used, and now in the book of Revelations, God's saying and using the same things. Okay, 2 wings of the great eagle. So now I'm just going to talk about a couple more verses referring to the first and the second beast of the Bible. Okay, in Revelations 13, and like I said, this might give you better context in the things that I've been covering. For it states, the first beast, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, and with 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems on its horns, and a blasphemous name on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power to his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority over the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" And the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth and uttered blasphemies against God, and blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. All right, guys, so we see the first beast. Okay, it clearly talks about that he had a mortal wound, that the whole earth marveled at the beast, and they worshiped the dragon, which is the devil, and he had given authority to the beast. Okay, so remember that. Okay, the 10 horns are the 10 global sustainability regions that the world gets divided into this green economy. The 7 heads are the G7 organization, okay, which are the 7 most powerful countries in the world, basically. And you could type into G7 if you want more info on them. And then what else? And that it says the dragon gave great authority. Okay, the dragon is the second beast, aka the Pope. So the Pope allowed the first beast to exercise authority for 42 months, and those 42 months is also equal to 3.5 years, which we see in all the other verses we just covered throughout this video, right? So something happens with the first beast, the Muslim Mahdi that I told you about, that gets risen up, that is going to be the leader of the caliphate that gets formed. And a mortal wound, but was healed by the second beast, which was the Pope. And the world marveled, right? And then it says that everyone was worshiping the beast, and who can fight against the beast, right? And then it says, and then they were allowed to make war with the saints and conquered them. So it talks about how the new laws and new stuff gets placed, and enough people are kind of like brainwashed to accept that Christians are like extremists, and that we're a threat to society, right? And that we're not. And when we start like talking about the mark and not to get it, and God tells you not to get it because you're going to be condemned in hell forever and blah blah blah, right? Persecution is going to get very bad. Okay, so it says that he allowed to make war with the saints and conquer them. So we can see how bad it's going to get if they conquered the saints, right? And then we saw, when we look at the other verses earlier, we saw that persecution is as bad as since the beginning of time. Okay, it's not going to be nowhere as bad since the foundations of the world, basically. And now here we have a verse saying that he was allowed to make war and conquer them, right? And the other verse also talked about that if Jesus didn't come ahead of time, there would be no saints left. So we can see how, like I said, persecution is going to be very intense. And this is why I made also the rapture video and some other videos that I forgot, but to help you just get an overall context of the book of Revelations and the return of Christ, and when he's supposed to return, and the signs to look out for throughout this tribulation period. Because like I said, God doesn't keep us in the dark, so we may be awake. So he doesn't come as a thief in the night to us who are aware, but he comes like a thief in the night for those who are not aware. Now let's talk about Revelation 13, which references the second beast. And then I saw another beast rising out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and they spoke like a dragon. It exercises all authority over the first beast in its presence, and it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, who had a mortal wound and was healed. And it performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven and earth, heaven to earth in front of people. And by signs that is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image of the beast that was surrounded by the word and by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak, and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. And it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So in the second beast, okay, let's break it down a little bit. It has two horns like a lamb, okay, and he spoke like a dragon. So it's basically the Pope deceiving to be Jesus, right? And he exercises all authority over the first beast. Okay, so just like I said earlier, that the Pope is going to exalt the Mahdi, but he's still going to be pulling the strings in the back end, just like how the Vatican runs the show now. Most people don't know this. I mean, some do if you're aware of this, but I know a lot of Catholics think like the Pope is good and the Catholic Church is good and stuff, but in reality, they're leading people to a bad place. Let's just say that. So here it's talking about he exercises all authority, just like the Pope exercises authority over certain presidents now, over like mafia groups, over criminal enterprises, over, this is why they're the wealthiest church out there, why they have the fanciest cathedrals, why every president goes there to visit them, why they kiss his hand, why they do all this stuff, okay? Because the Pope runs the show. He's the head honcho of the devil system. So let's keep breaking it down here. It says, and they're allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak, and might cause those who would not worship the beast be slain. So they're going to prop up. So once this third temple gets risen, the Pope is going to run the show from Jerusalem. Okay. And the number 666 is not a physical, like the chip. It's not going to say like 666 on the chip. Okay. It's just referencing to some type of authority. So in the United Nations, okay, the seat number of 666 is going to have a special regime privilege in the state of Jerusalem, and that seat is 666, and whoever has that seat number is going to have the power to have this special regime status once all this stuff happens in Jerusalem. So sometimes names are used as a form of authority. Okay, Just like when it says Jesus comes back and on his thigh is King of Kings and Lord of Lords and all this, it doesn't literally mean on his thigh he's going to have like a tattoo saying that. It just means some form of authority. Just like you say, stop in the name of the King, stop in the name of love, right? Or just as some examples, right? And then it states here that those who don't worship the image can be slain. So we see that it talks about those who don't worship the image, those who don't get the microchip cannot function in society, right? And then on the other verses, we saw how persecution is going to be as worse since the foundations of the world. Then we see the other verses talking about if Jesus Christ didn't come ahead of time, there would be no saints left. Then we see another verse where it talked about, he allowed war with the saints and allowed them to be conquered. So like I said, it's important to understand what is coming your way because God tells us, and it's not to pump fear. It's just to make you more bold in your faith, right? To proclaim and be, like I said, more bold and share the good news more than maybe if you're lukewarm now, or maybe if you think there's others near you that are willing to hear this message, right? Or the good news about Jesus, to like kind of step up your game in sharing the good news. All right, guys. So that's it for my video. I hope this video helped somewhat, give you more clarity on the Abomination of Desolation event and how it's the third temple, and then the temple sacrifices start and then end, right? Because they're going to bring back the temple sacrifices once those get risen up. The Vatican and the Muslim world are going to point as that as the Antichrist, and they're going to destroy it. And then the Pope and the Mahdi are going to take control of Jerusalem, and they're going to unite. The Pope is the false prophet, right, that claims to be Jesus, and that it's not supposed to be taken literally and it's supposed to be figuratively, and that he's going to exalt the Mahdi, right, in these times ahead to give him authority. And like I said, they're going to establish a system where you need the chip, right, the mark of the beast. And we saw how bad persecution is going to get. And I think that's about it. And we talked about a little bit about, I think I might make a separate video of this, but the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns, which is once again the G7 nation and the 10 global sustainability regions that gets implemented with this new push that the Vatican and the United Nations and the G7 is ushering in. And that's about it. Hope this helped. Once again, check out my other videos if you haven't. It'll bring more clarity to all this. If you have any feedback on the ways I'm presenting my videos, feel free to comment below if you have any other questions so I can continue to improve. Peace.